our very own beloved Bev Salmon.
Today is Thursday, August 18th, 2022. I'm here with the one and only Miss Bev Salmon, the first Black Canadian who became a female
counselor.
Black female counselor, and have had many interesting conversations with Miss Salmon, but want to get it on the record so that we have an archive of this information. Have other people interviewed you?
Yes.
Who else has?
Well, for Ontario Black History Society, I think they've done it.
They have a video?
They should have, yeah.
Okay, so is that, what's her name again? That I can't remember her name.
Usually Pamela's the kind of office person.
What was the lady who used to run the Ontario?
Oh, Rosemary Sadler.
Rosemary Sadler, that's right.
Yeah.
So Rosemary's not running it anymore. But you know what I was thinking? I was thinking about, she's a Black historian. She does a lot of work with York University and the Encyclopedia, the Canadian Encyclopedia. Oh, I can't get her name. It's on the top of my tongue, but...
She's at York?
Yes. She recently, I think, became a professor at York. I think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
My brain is just blocked. But either way, we have you here right now. And I finally have this on film, but since trying to get it since 1997 or 8. I can't remember when. But Bev, tell me about you, and more specifically, you said you had a funny story about the Order of Canada.
Right. I have a shoe story. It's very formal when you're getting your Order of Canada. Everything's precise and to the minute. So we were all assembled for the doors to open so we could, go in and get our seating. And all the guests were already seated. And about 3 minutes before the doors opened, I looked down, my shoe strap had broken.
Oh.
So there's a big scramble. Somebody said Scotch tape over in the Governor General's residence, like official building. And believe it or not, they came up with Scotch tape and they bound it all around my shoe. And so I was able to, go in and get my Order of Canada. It's so funny, my daughter who lives in Malloy was watching on TV. And she said, "Ma, what happened to your shoe?" She actually noticed it.
She noticed it.
Yeah.
Was it because it was shiny?
It was like an ankle strap.
Yeah.
And they had to not have the ankle part because it had broken.
Right. So what did she notice? The shiny part?
She just noticed that it was different from my other shoe.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on your Order of Canada.
Thank you.
And also your Order of Ontario.
Right, that was the year before.
Right. And what other awards have you received?
I got the Queen's,
Jubilee?
Jubilee Award, right?
Oh, congrats on that.
Henry-Dixon, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did the city give you an award too?
Yes.
What was that award?
It was, I think, not Confederation, but I think it was 125 years service.
Oh, okay.
Like the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're not 125, so it's not your service.
No.
It's the award is called this.
Yeah.
I see. So was that a key to the city?
No.
Okay.
No.
But it's in recognition of your service to Torontonians.
Right, that's right.
And quite frankly, your service has not only been to Torontonians, it's been for all of Canada in general, with the work that you've done across the board as it relates to human rights and race relations, and specifically the advancement and protections of the rights of Black people living in Canada.
I was, when I was on council, I was chair of the Race Relations Committee for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So, yeah, they gave me a warrant.
And what did you do then?
Well, we actually helped establish policy on race relations Canada-wide.
Mm-hmm. And were you involved with, what is the gentleman's name? He recently died a few years back. I see his face. He and another individual went down to a small town, Dresden, Ontario.
Right.
You know who I mean?
Yeah, is it Stanley Grizel or
Well,
no?
Stanley Rizal was involved somehow as well, but the other man. Oh, my brain has stopped
Yeah,
that. You know, and they were saying they're trying to, just like the United States, they were trying to keep black people out of establishments of eating in restaurants. So
right.
he and a woman who is of Asian descent went down. Do you know about that incident?
Yeah, I know some of that history, but I wasn't directly
Involved.
in
Yeah.
that.
But you also were involved in trying to, and in fact were effective in ending carting in Toronto. From the aspect of all the elders getting together to do that, you were involved with that. I saw you in the press conference.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, my concern about policing started back in the 70s, and that's when I myself was harassed by the police. I had reported about 3 or 4 incidents for people who were afraid to report the police. So one was a neighbor whose son was Jewish, but he had like an afro hairstyle and a dark tan. He was sitting on the lawn in this neighborhood with about 8 of his friends. Police came up, picked him out, said there'd been a robbery in the area, took him to the Don Mills police station, kept him incognito overnight. His parents had no idea, what had happened or where he was. So they were going to report, and their lawyer said, "Don't bother, your home needs protecting, so is your family, so don't report to the police." And so that was one. The other was a person I was talking to who was having neighbor problems, and he went in the Don Mills police station, and the police officer said, "Oh, you're having neighbor trouble. Must have been a Packy or one of them coloreds." So he was also afraid to report, so I reported that also. And I was waiting to go to Sarnia to a policing conference on racism and meeting a professor up at Lawrence and Leslie Street, just near here. We were going to meet at the gas station, and then I was going to drive. And a third professor, Marlene Green, was coming with us. And I was to drive to Sarnia that morning for this, conference started about 10. So it was around the morning. I got the corner, and Fred was there, Fred Case, the professor, but Marlene wasn't, so I walked. Well, I had an afro wig, that was common in those days. I walked from my car to the pay phone, and while I was doing on the phone calling to see if Marlene had slept in or whatever, along came a police cruiser. I got off the phone. They'd already were at my car, demanding that they search it, and telling Fred, open the trunk, So anyway, he said, "No, it's the lady's car, and she'll be right here." So when I went, they took my license and, when their cruiser, they did demand that I open the glove compartment. And I realized this is my husband's car, and I'm not positive if the ownership's in there or not. So I let them. Anyway, they delayed us about half an hour sitting in their cruiser. And finally they came back, and I said, "Look, this is my husband's car. You can drive, a few blocks. We'll wake him up. You can talk to him." But anyway, they finally let us go. But, we were really delayed. So anyway, I reported that. So a few weeks after I put in these reports, my doorbell rang at 2 a.m. 2 police officers. The house was in darkness. So I said, and they knew my name. So I said, Beverly Salmon. I said, yes. They said, we're here to investigate your noisy pool party. I said, there's no cars in the driveway. There's no lights on in the house. I haven't been in the pool all evening. You know, but I said, I want your names. And they wouldn't give back their badge numbers. And then I reported that to John Mill Station. So that was the result of me reporting these incidents. You know.
So retaliation.
So my concern about all these issues started, back then. Also, I'd heard from Len Braithwaite that when he was a student at U of T, he was walking along University Avenue, stopped by the police because they didn't think he should be in that area, So, things had accumulated, actually. So I'd always had a very, very strong concern about police treatment of black people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the carding, that was on top of the agenda,
And the black community has said for decades that these have been issues.
Right.
And you've been at the forefront of that since the 70s, if not even earlier,
Right.
Where you formally were involved in politics.
Mm-hmm.
But even prior to that, you were involved in the advocacy of protecting black people's rights and interests, and dealing with police policies that were discriminatory.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a long time.
I've also spoken to a number of black police officers. A few females who had left the force because they couldn't tolerate the culture and the way they were being treated.
Mm.
Yeah.
And they came to you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So how effective was the advocacy work in the 70s as to now that we're in the 21st century?
Well, there wasn't much political interest. Back in the 70s, I went to Bette Stevenson, who was an MPP. She was a Minister of Education. I talked to her about the opportunities that were not available for black youth and racism and so on. She just looked at me and she said, I have an adopted black child, is no problem. And I thought, yes, he does, lady. Yeah. But I couldn't get any serious attention on it because to them it wasn't a threat, wasn't an issue. And I did a lot of advocacy for education starting back in the early 70s.
So what's changed? Is it more of the public's political will for change, or do you think that we have people in government now who are willing to change? What's changed?
Well, I think what's changed is there's more building of awareness, but it still wasn't getting us there. And it wasn't really until, just during COVID with the horrible racial situation that more people really woke up. So we're far from being there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the truth. We are far from being there. I think I was telling you that had started a documentary in the early 2000s on access to justice, and one on police accountability, and they kind of seem to meld in together because the things are overlapping.
Right.
In particular, holding police accountable, and our system of justice, the civil justice system, allows people to hold people accountable in particular ways, but never really concretely having an impact.
Right.
And so I've been disillusioned by the civil justice system because what I've been experiencing, being the longest matter in the court, what I've been observing is that the system itself is a problem. And it is, in my opinion, an observation and experience what I say as being a contradictory system, one of white supremacy, ableism, patriarchy, misogyny, all of these things that are in the charter that the people who are protected. It seems like the court allows these things.
Right.
And so when you're saying you've been fighting since, or advocating since the 70s, about trying to protect the public, in particular black people, from police abuse of powers, the education system, and the anti-black sentiments and policies that have been going on for the last 50 years, at least to your knowledge
Right.
and experience. It's the kind of thing that I say, nothing changes unless the people in government actually make those changes.
Right.
I mean, we can be in the streets all we want, and you've been doing this for more than 50 years, but what changes unless we get those people in government? What did you feel that you were able to effectively change as the first black female city councilor in Toronto?
Well, I did chair the Race Relations Committee. I felt I could educate my colleagues about the issues, because, you know, I'd put an issue on the agenda, and some of them would come to me, I want to understand this, because it was beyond their frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, you have to be at the table. And now, thankfully, there are more and more black people running and being elected into politics,
Yes.
so they can influence their colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, they just can't understand. It's beyond what they have ever experienced. So,
Is that a part of, in your observation, a lack of just connecting with society? Because I mean, for me, I actually was shocked when I was first assaulted by a police officer, and I had a lot of white friends saying, well, didn't you know?
No.
So it said to me, well, they knew. To ask me, didn't I know? It seems like you knew all this time, so why haven't you done anything about it? So when you're saying that they came to you for help and insight, they wanted to know, do you not think that they had a responsibility in their own respect, in their own right, to investigate things for themselves and know, like, they should know better? I'm trying to get that from your expertise or your knowledge base.
well, a lot of them don't have black friends. They, you know, they're in an isolated situation. And it's hard for them to actually believe, you know, what black people experience. But when it's right before your face, you know, like with the shooting and all the things that have been happening, then it's a reality check for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of people are very well-meaning. Some people are amazing, some white people. They really do have that understanding and empathy. They're rare. They're very rare to have that naturally.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me about your nursing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share some of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I entered nurses training, I was actually the only black nurse that ever trained at the hospital where I trained at Wellesley. And I remember one of my what would you say, nursing supervisor, just saying that she said I was very slow. And we had to pack some trays, like, for sterilizing. And I said, I may not dash around and make a big, but if you count how many I've finished at the end of the day, they've been done calmly and methodically, and I can compete with anybody else. You know? But she had this stereotype that it's going to be slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it you that you had to go to the United States? Was it you telling me that story, that you had to go to the United States for training because something wasn't being permitted in Canada? I can't remember.
No, but before I trained, the first black nurse to train in Toronto was probably about 6 years before me, and she trained East General.
Mm.
My husband's aunt, who was Jamaican, and she took over his orphan family of 6.
Mm.
She was a nurse that had to be trained in the U.S., but they wouldn't permit her to do nursing here. So to raise those 6 children, she had to work as a domestic and factories. And luckily, their parents had left a home, but they were orphaned. Yeah, so she could not work as a nurse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing those things.